Hello. How are you today? Is everybody hearing me quite well? Hello. How are you doing? Is everything all right in Vietnam? Okay. Anyway, so today we've got a last lecture about questions. So let me know what your questions are. We've got 3 hours to answer questions. Okay, great. That is the exercise on bank run is precisely the exercise I wanted to do now. So we can start with this exercise if you agree. Okay. Okay, let's do that. Right. So here we go. Okay, so that is what we're going to do now, right? Great. So let me just take the exercise. Why I don't have the sorry, just the time to, because I've got two computers. No. Okay, so just give me 1 minute. I'm going to send me the exercise. Just 1 minute, please.
Anh chị ơi, trong lúc chờ thầy thì em cũng báo luôn là sau giờ học của thầy thì mọi người vui lòng là nán lại một ít phút để em hướng dẫn cách thi qua Zoom vào ngày Chủ nhật tuần này ạ. Em sẽ hướng dẫn và giải đáp luôn các thắc mắc ở trên trong cái conference này luôn, nên là lớp mình chịu khó ở lại giúp em một chút nhé.
So I'm back. I'm back with the exercise. All right. Okay, so now I want to share something with you. No. Okay. Yes, I think that is okay. Okay. Do you see the document? Let me know. You see the document? It's important for me to know. Do you see something or not?
Yes, I see, Professor.
Okay, great. So let's start with this exercise. So this is an exercise to illustrate this question of bank runs. So consider a one good 3-period 2-agent economy in which the gross return for an investment is R1, strictly lower than 1, for an investment during the first period from t equal 0 to t equal 1. R2 is the gross return for an investment during the second year, that is from t equal 1 to t equal 2. And R3 for an investment during the third year, that is from t equals 2 to t equals 3. So assume that got different inequalities. So there is this first inequality. So 2 times R1 minus 1 is strictly positive. That is, R1 is lower than 1, but 2R1 is strictly higher than 1. Moreover, you see that okay, if there are two people investing at t equal 0, at t equal 1, you've got from t equal 0 to t equal 1, you've got 2 R1. 2 gives 2 R1. And if you go up to t equals 2, then you obtain 2 R1 R2. Okay. So the other inequality, of course, is related to this, because when we consider minus 1, to some extent, it is considering that there is a withdrawal of 1 unit. So preferences can be of 3 types. So let's say that there are people only looking at the first period. Okay, they are just interested in the current time. Other people are interested in current time and future time. T equal 1, consumption, let's say consumption or wealth at T equal 1 and at T equal 2. And so these are named type 2 individuals. And those one are named type 1 individuals. And finally, there are also what is called type 3 individuals, that is, individuals interested in, let's say, consumption at all the period of time at t equal 1, t equal 2, and t equal 3. So the utility in that case depends on the consumption at t equal 1 plus the consumption at t equal 2 plus the consumption at t equal 3. And what else? Yes, we've got an assumption. Well, not an assumption, but how to denote the probabilities that agent 1 is of type 1. And this is a joint probability because it is related to two agents, agent 1 and agent 2. So capital P I J correspond to the probability that agent 1 is of type I, with I, of course, equals 1, 2, or 3. And agent 2 is of type J, with J, of course, equals to 1, 2, or 3. Okay. So for instance, you can have pi 1, 1, which is the case that both agents, agent 1 and agent 2, are of type 1. P12 is probability that agent 1 is of type 1 and agent 2 is of type 2. And for instance, P23 is the probability that agent 1 is of type 2 and agent 2 is of type 3, right? Okay, this is simply notation. So, the exogenous banking contract allows each agent to withdraw the amount initially deposited without penalty during period 1 and 2, but interest can be collected only if the agent waits until period 3. So first, define, so this corresponds to the strategy of agent I withdrawing at time t. Write the matrix of payment when both agents initially deposit 1 unit. Okay, so you've got an endowment of 1 unit, and then you invest each. So at t equal 0, both agents invest 1 unit. So the initial investment is equal to 2, of course. So we're gonna try to fulfill this chart. So the diagonal, that one, is easy to fulfill because both agents in this case are doing exactly the same. So here the two are withdrawing and they obtain R1, because remember that R1 is lower than 1. So they cannot obtain more than that. In the second period, after 2 periods of time of investment, they obtain this amount. And finally, if the two agents go up to the third period of time, well, they obtain R1 times R2 times R3, R1 times R2 times R3. Okay. So what about now when people behave differently? So in that case, here, the agent 2 is going to withdraw at t equal 1, while agent 1 is going up to t equal 2. So you remember then 2R1 is higher than 1. So agent 2 is able to obtain 1. And agent 1 is going to obtain what is left, that is this amount. Okay, minus 1. Why? Because 1 has already been taken by agent 2. Okay, you agree with that? And of course, this is symmetric. So in that case, you've got 1, and for agent 2, you've got 2R1, R2 minus 1. Okay, you agree with that? Let me know. If you are not telling me anything, I don't know whether you understand or not. Okay. So what about in that case? Well, in that case, agent 2 still obtain 1 because he or she withdraws at t equal 1. And what is going to be modified is that the investment now belongs up to period 3. So you're going to have 2R1, R2, R3 minus 1. No, sorry, there is, sorry, there is a mistake over there. Sorry, because, no, sorry. There is something which is wrong. Because what, okay, I see. Because what is, okay. So you've got, it is in that amount that 1 is withdrawn. So this is what is going to be invested from t equal 1 to t equal 2. So this is time R2. And the same here. Like this. Okay, and so in that case, minus 1 times R2, R3. Okay, and here it is just the symmetric position. So you've got 2R1 minus 1, which is left at the end of at t equal 1, and times R2 and times R3. What about the last case? In that case, you see that the agent 2 is going to withdraw at t equal 2. So you're going to have 2R1, R2. No, sorry. So it's going to obtain 1, because he withdraws at t equal 2. And what is left is 2R1, R2, because withdraw is at t equal 2 minus 1 times R3. And what about the symmetric position? So in that case, agent 1 obtains 1. And what is left is 2R1, R2 minus 1, R3. Okay, this is what you can say about this. Is that okay for you? Okay. You agree with that? Okay. Okay, so this is basically, if you consider question 2, this is basically the same thing, except that we no longer consider t equal 3. So here you have R1, R1, 1, 2, R1 minus 1, R2, R1, R2, R1, R2, and 1 and 2, R1 minus 1, R2. Okay. So the question is, to compute the equilibrium. So when we talk about equilibrium in that case, is Nash equilibrium. Okay. So there are 4 possibilities. First possibility, second possibility, third possibility, and fourth possibility. And the question is to consider each of these possibilities and try to see if there is a deviation for one agent, a unilateral deviation, which would be profitable for an agent. So if you take, for instance, so you see that this case is related to this box. Okay, but we know that we have this inequality. So if, for instance, agent 2 believes that agent 1 is going to act by using A2, you see that agent 2 strictly prefers to deviate to A1 because 1 is greater than R1, R2. So this is not an equilibrium because there is at least one unilateral deviation. So I repeat, due to this inequality, well, if you assume that if agent 2 assumes that agent 1 is going to behave by choosing A2, you see that agent 2 strictly prefers to deviate to A1 because it's going to receive 1, which is strictly larger than R1, R2. So this case is not an equilibrium. Okay. So for instance, here we're going to have agent 1 and here agent 2. So for instance, let's consider that case. That one, it doesn't work. That case. So this possibility. Okay, so you see that if agent 1 considers that agent 2 is going to choose A2, it's not going to deviate from A1 to A2 because 1 is strictly greater than R1, R2. Okay. So agent 1 is on his optimal strategy. But what about what about agent 2? So we also have this inequality. And you see that if agent 2 believes that agent 1 is going to choose A1, well, is not going to choose A2. Is rather going to choose A1, because by choosing A1 is going to receive R1, and R1 is strictly greater than this amount. So this is not one equilibrium. That one is also not an equilibrium. So what about that case? Well, that case, agent 1 is not going to no, not agent 1, sorry. Agent 2, yes, agent 2 is not going to deviate. Because if agent 2 thinks that agent 1 is going to choose A2, then by playing A1 is going to receive 1, which is strictly greater than R1, R2. But what about agent 1? Well, if agent 1 thinks that agent 2 is going to choose A1, you see that he's not going to play A2, because by playing A2, he would obtain this amount, which is strictly lower than R1. Remember this inequality. So this is not an equilibrium either. So finally, there is this situation, but there are cases in which there is no equilibrium. So even if there is only one box left, it's not true that this is the equilibrium, but in that case, it is the equilibrium. So you see that agent 2 is not going to move from A1 to A2 because R1 is greater than this amount. And agent 1 is also not going to move from A1 to A2 because R1 is greater than this amount. Okay, so in that case, you see that the only equilibrium is A1, A1. Okay, so this is the only equilibrium. And you see already that actually so there is already in that case so this is a bank run. Okay, so this is for question 2. Do you have questions so far? Is that clear? A good point. That's a good point. I mean, the okay. The Whitewood agent. Well, there is a simple answer to, but this is I mean the question R1 lower than 1. So why would agent join the contract? So this is a good question. Well, so first of all, here we are. This is just part of the game, because voluntarily, so far we haven't looked at the entire game. I mean, we we haven't considered t equal 3. But moreover, you know that there is still the question of transferability of good. So if goods are not transferable, the only way to transfer good is to use this investment. So if, let's say, goods are not transferable from one period to another one, then investing is the only possibility to transfer money, transfer a good from one period to another period of time. So this is one answer. This is not the only answer. So the other answer is to say that, well, this is just a sub game, but not the entire game, okay? Because in the entire game, R1 times R2 times R3 this is strictly higher than 1. Okay? But good point, good question. So finally, we've got the let's say question 3. So taking into account this, by using this, we can answer question 3. So we know that R1 lower than 1. And moreover, we know that 1 is strictly higher than R1, R2, and R1 is higher than 2R1 minus 1 times R2. So you see that, okay. If I consider, yes, agent 1 for so if an agent is either of 4 agents of types 1 or 2, this is not going to be, we don't have to take into account this for this agent. Okay, because they don't care about obtaining something at t equal 3. And you see that this is strictly higher than 1, and this is strictly higher than R1. So we also, no, sorry, we also have this inequality. So in other words, the strategy A2 is strictly dominated by A1. Okay, so this is why we can say that the optimal strategy is A1I if I's type is 1 or 2. Well, of course, for a type 1, there is no question. So that guy, the utility is only this. So for sure, the best, the optimal strategy is, so the optimal strategy is necessarily A1. But for type 2, then we've got u of c1 plus x1 plus x2. So we have to compare u of r1 plus 0 to u of 0 plus 2 r1 minus 1 r2. And this is strictly higher due to this inequality. And moreover, we also have to compare u of 1 plus 0. So this is at t equal 1, and this is at t equal 2. And this is greater than u of 0 plus, yes, 0 plus r1, r2. Okay, so this is why, because u is strictly increasing function. Okay, you agree with that? You agree? You understand? Agreed? What is not clear so far? You are just comparing, let's say, amount of money or consumption, and you shoot the bigger amount of money. Yes. Yes. But so if an agent chooses A1, there is no longer any consumption for him at t equal 2. Moreover, if an agent uses strategy A2, there is no consumption at t equal 1. So A1 leads to x1 plus 0, because x2 will necessarily be equal to 0, and strategy A2 leads to 0 plus x2 because x1 equal 0. Okay, you agree with that? No questions? Yeah. A utility, yes. A utility function is always quickly increasing. The meaning is simply to say that let's say an agent always prefers more than less in terms of consumption. That's the way it is. So in other words, U prime is always positive. So the first derivative is always positive. Okay? Is it clear now? You all agree? Okay, thank you. Thank you. Great. Okay, so what about the optimal strategy for type 3? Well, in that case, A3 is the optimal strategy. for this type of agent. So in that case, well, you have to remove all the what is in red. Sorry. And if you consider this inequality, well, it implies that this is going to be greater than this, and we know that R1 is greater than, so we can already remove this strategy. This is going to be greater than 1, and this is also going to be greater than 1. So this is the optimal strategy for a type 3 individual. Okay. So what about the question of bank run? Well, so the bank run is when an individual which is not a type 1, withdraw at t equal 1. This would be a bank run because a type 1 withdrawing at t equal 1, not a bank run. This is normal. Okay, this is just normal. Normal, why? Because that guy, type 1, goes normal. Because he's only interested by his her consumption at equal 1. But type 2 or 3 withdrawing at t equal 1 here corresponds to a bank run. But we know that that guy is not going to withdraw at t equal 1 because not that guy. Because his her optimal strategy is AE3. But the optimal strategy of this type of individual is AI1. not AI2. So in that case, if there is a type 2 guy, then have bank run. That is an earlier withdrawing of money. Okay, is that clear for everybody? Okay, yes, I will. Clear. It's not A1, it's R, R, R. Okay. So if we consider type 3 individual, well, taking into account all the other inequalities, we know that he or she is not going to choose A2. So we have to compare A1 and A3. And this is, so we have 2 R1 minus 1 R2 R3, which is higher than 1, and 1 is higher than R1. So so we are sure that this is greater than that. Okay. So moreover, well, this is natural assumption. So saying that R R2, R3 greater than 1 is a natural assumption. It simply said that you want to invest. Coming back to one of your previous question, if this would be not the case, then you definitely would not agree to invest. Okay, so this is natural assumption, let's say. And what about the other one? What if I compare? I should compare the two, I think. So if you consider this, you see that this is greater than that. And since this expression is greater than 1, that one is also greater than 1. And therefore, this also is greater than 1. Okay? Yeah, so R1, R2, R3, 1 is a natural assumption. It simply says that you want to invest at t equals 0. If you take the reverse, you would never accept investing in this project. You would never accept this contract. Okay. But in order to have the other inequality satisfied, I think it amounts to assuming that R2 is greater than 1. Okay. And then you obtain the optimal strategy for a type 3 individual. Okay. Do you have other questions? No other questions? So if there is no other questions, maybe we can make a short break. You agree with that? 5 to 10 minutes. 5 to 10 minutes break. So by U x1, okay, so let's say if so, consider the type 2 individual. So if so, utility, then U x1 1 plus x2. But if the chosen strategy is A1, then x1 is going to be strictly positive, but x2 is going to be 0. So we have of x1 plus 0. Okay. Yes, I will. If so, if a type 2 individual chooses strategy, chooses strategy 2, then x1 equals 0 and x2 is strictly positive. In that case, we're going to have the utility of 0 plus x2. Okay. Yes, there is something missing, sorry, about the inefficient allocation. So you're right. Good question. Thank you. So Yes, it is here. So the question is about if R2 is strictly higher than 1, so in that case, you see that 2R1, R2 is strictly higher than R2. And so this is why it is not optimal to go up to t equal 2. So it's not optimal to withdraw at t equal 1 if R2 is greater than 1. Then it would be better to still to invest up to t equal 2 rather than continuing the investment up to t equal 2. Okay, so that is the answer. Okay. Here, well, here we will consider that only R1 is lower than 1. And by the way, this is sense of Bankrupt. In other words, are to imply that would be efficient to invest up to t equal 3. So if there is withdrawing four, this is inefficient drawing. And here, bank run is associated with inefficient withdrawing. Okay, you agree with that? Okay, so do you want to make a break now? You want to make a break? Okay, so I agree with, well, it depends. Depends. Because the notion of bank run is inefficiency. Inefficiency. So R2 and R3 are natural assumptions. Other questions? No other questions? Okay, so this exercise is now finished. So let's say we're going to make 10 minutes break, okay? And then we're going to do another exercise, okay? So let's take 10 minutes break. Okay, see you in 10 minutes. Okay. So let's start again after this swift break, and we're gonna do another exercise. If I've got it, let me check. Oh, sorry. Yes, give me 1 minute. Yes, we're gonna do the second exercise, and then I've got another exercise that I want to do with you. Okay. So this exercise is about. Sorry. This exercise is about adverse selection and signaling. Okay. Yeah, I'm going to do an exercise on moral hazard after that one. Okay. But let me do that one. Okay. Okay. So let n entrepreneurs which each wants to take a project. Undertaking the project requires an investment equals to capital I. So there is a fixed investment which is required. The gains of the project are tilde are randomly distributed according to a normal law. there exist two types of project. So type 1 is going to yield more money on average than type 2 project, because 120, of course, is strictly higher than 50 for the same variance. Each entrepreneur knows the type of the project he can undertake, but he cannot choose which type of project to realize. So in other words, because this is, as we're going to see, this is a private information to the entrepreneur, well, the problem is basically a problem of adverse selection. So there is a problem of adverse selection. The credit market is made of many banks. Thus, we will consider that this is a competitive market. Each bank does not know type of project an entrepreneur can undertake. So the bank doesn't know the type of project an entrepreneur can undertake. However, each bank knows the priority distribution of the type of project in the economy. So the bank thinks that the probability is 1/2 for each type of project. Okay, and everybody, to simplify, is protected by the limited liability. So first question, how do you call this problem of asymmetric information between entrepreneurs and banks? Well, adverse selection. This is not moral hazard, because the probability of success does the return does not depend on the behavior of the entrepreneur. Okay, but there are two types of project. This is the private information to the entrepreneur. So this is basically a problem of adverse selection. So suppose now that realizing a type 1 project requires an investment of 100, while realizing a type 2 project requires an investment of 150. Moreover, assume that if an entrepreneur obtains a bank financing but does not realize the project, he can waste the money in order to benefit from private benefit. Do you think that the problem of asymmetric information prevent an entrepreneur which can realize a type 1 project to find a bank ready to lend money to the entrepreneur? Well, the answer is yes. Why? Because a type 2 entrepreneur is going to cheat on her type in order to obtain a financing for 100 and to waste this money. Okay, so in other words, a type 2 entrepreneur is going to mimic a type 1 entrepreneur. That is, a type 2 entrepreneur know that by asking this amount of money, well, financial market is going to think that this is a type 2 entrepreneur. But a type 2 entrepreneur can only ask for this amount of money. So by mimicking what type 1 entrepreneurs are going to do, that is the amount that they are going to ask for in terms of a loan. and then to waste this money. Okay. So now consider that the initial investment which is required to undertake the project is the same, 100. And by the way, you see that if the investment is 100, without discounting, let's say that the discount rate is just equal to 0. So discount rate equals to 0. Just to simplify, you see that the van of a type 1 project is positive, while the van of type 2 project is negative. No, sorry, the contrary. Sorry. The contrary, sorry. It is 50 minus 100. Okay. Okay, so here assume that the required investment is the same. Moreover, entrepreneurs are risk averse and are characterized by the following utility function. So here, coming back to what we saw previously, we have U prime, which is positive, but U second is negative. And this implies risk aversion. Okay. Well, and moreover, we know that, so this is called an exponential utility function. Utility function, and the risk is normally distributed. So in that case, the certainty equivalent is very easy to compute. So the formula of the certainty equivalent, if these two assumptions are satisfied, it is just equals to this due to assumption 1 and 2. Okay. Okay. So since entrepreneurs are risk averse, the best would be to transfer risk to risk neutral banks. Therefore, we will consider the following financial contract, where A corresponds to the percentage of the investment which is self-financed by the entrepreneur, and P to the monetary amount that a bank proposes to the entrepreneur, to one entrepreneur, to letting him undertaking the project. So, the optimality in terms of risk transfer would be that A would be equal to 0. So this is the optimality in terms of risk transfer, because banks are risk neutral. But this is not what we are going to observe in an equilibrium with signaling. Okay, and this is basically what we're going to do now. Okay, and P, you see, it's kind of a price. So, for instance, the maximal amount that the bank is ready to pay. For instance, if A is equal to 0, is correspond just to the expected gains of the project. So in other words, the entrepreneur receives the benefit of the project, but banks, of course, don't want to lose money. Okay. So now consider that. So for instance, consider what? So you see that A, of course, belongs to 0, 1. So if A is strictly different than 0, well then the entrepreneur is going to receive A R tilde plus 1 plus P with P, which is equal to 1 minus A E of R tilde. Okay. So what about question 3? Well, question 3 is really easy. So there is no self-financing. So for the bank thinks that, well, it is going to obtain times 120 plus expected gains minus 100. Okay, so it is so in that case, actually, there is no financing. So in other words, there are too many types to project, bad projects, or good projects are not good enough. And you see that this implies that there is no financing. Okay. So now we are going to change a little bit the analysis by introducing self-financing. But we know already what is going to happen, because we'll see that now we're going to have signaling. That is to say, type 1 entrepreneur are going to self-finance their project. Sorry. So I repeat, type 1 entrepreneurs are going to self-finance their project, at least partly. But not type 2 entrepreneurs. Okay. Okay, so that is what we're going to do now. So we have to compute the no mimicking constraint of type 2's entrepreneurs. So in a separating equilibrium, so in a separating equilibrium, type 2's entrepreneur don't realize their project. Why? Because the NPV, once again, is negative. Negative NPV. So no one is ready to finance this kind of project. So if a type 2 entrepreneur doesn't mimic a type 1 entrepreneur, is going to get 0. Okay, so this is the utility of 0. Okay. Compared to what? Compared to the utility of a type 2 entrepreneur if he or she mimics a type 1 entrepreneur. So by mimicking a type 1 entrepreneur. Okay, so in that case, we're going to have what? We're going to have what is obtained. Sorry, it's not alpha, is, well, sorry. We're going to have A times R tilde 2, because this is a type 2 project. But the price which is received it corresponds to the price of a type 1 project. So U of 0 should be higher than U of expected gains. And this is fixed, while this is random variable. So how to do now? Well, it's easy. We're going to compute the certainty equivalent of this. Because this is a random variable, so we have to compute the expected utility. So using the previous formula, we know that the certainty equivalent is sigma square. So in our case, this is sorry, there is a mistake there. Sorry, there are two mistakes actually. The first mistake is that the return is positive. Yeah, okay. So here, so if you compute the equivalent of the variance, it is the variance of what? Of so this is a constant. So this is a square variance of R tilde 2, which is, so in our case, this is minus okay. So now we have to want but there are two there are actually two answers. There is one possibility which is negative, and another solution which is positive. So the minimum amount here, the minimum amount is going to be %. So this is the minimum amount. And in that case, there is signaling. So it's not 0.6, it's rho. Okay. Okay. So what about what is called the no mimicking constraint? We want type 2 entrepreneurs not to take well, not to behave, let's say, not to behave like type 1's entrepreneurs. So if they don't mimic a type 1 entrepreneur, there is no financing. So in that case, the utility is U of 0, right? No financing. And this has to be greater than the expected utility if they mimic type 1 entrepreneur. Right? So what about type 1 entrepreneur? Well, he's going to receive a prize from outside investors, but he's or she also going to take risk. Okay. But this is not very easy to use. So we are going to modify this by its certainty equivalent. And we know that the certainty equivalent is going to be expected certainty is going to be so this is going to be therefore we want and because since u is strictly increasing, it amounts to simply comparing the arguments. Okay. Well, this is quite easy. If there is a constant, well, the variance is just equal to 0. Okay. Simple formulae. Have you got questions on this exercise? Yes, but okay. So I see your point, but this is precisely the object of the no mimicking constraint. Because by doing that, we want the entrepreneur to be worse by mimicking a type 1 entrepreneur. We want the type 2 entrepreneur to be worse if he or she mimics a type 1 entrepreneur rather than not doing anything. And here, this is coming from the fact that, of course, there is this question of private benefit, but also there is the question of risk, which is taken. And the entrepreneur is risk averse. Okay. Yes, right. They are risk averse. they want to transfer, yes, they want to transfer as much as possible, but you see that here in the separating equilibrium, the part which is the part held by the entrepreneur is quite high, 88, more than 88%. Okay, and this is done just for a type 2 entrepreneur, not to mimic a type 1 entrepreneur. There is no pooling equilibrium here. The pooling equilibrium is not possible here. Pooling, good question, very good question. You're right. Equilibrium not possible here because 0.5 times negative. Yeah, so what? You're right. This is why over there I put 100. No, there is no pooling here. There is only one separating equilibrium. Yes, this is the only possible equilibrium here. And in order to signal that they have good project, they self-finance up to 88% of the required initial investment. Okay, not up to, at least self-finance, at least 88% of the required initial. Okay. Okay. You want to make 5 minutes break? Okay, let's do 5 minutes break. Okay, see you later. Okay, so to finish, I want to make another exercise. That one. Yes, that one. Well, this is an exercise which is based on a moral hazard problem. So you hear me and you see the document correctly? Let me know. Yes. Okay, this is moral hazard. Okay. Okay, so consider an entrepreneur which wants to realize a fixed size project. Realizing the project requires an investment capital I. The entrepreneur has no retained earnings and should find outside investors, let's say a bank, ready to finance the project. The project can either succeed or fail. If it succeeds, the gains of the project are equal to capital R. While if it fails, the gains are just equal to zero. The probability of success of the project depends on the behavior of the entrepreneur. If he or she behaves well, the probability of success is equal to PH, while it is equal to PL if he or she behaves badly, with of course PH greater than PL. There is no private benefit for the entrepreneur when behaving well. However, if the entrepreneur behaves badly, he then enjoys a private benefit, which is either equal to BL or BH. Okay, so here there are two different levels of private benefit. And of course, BH is greater than BL. The entrepreneur can be labeled a good entrepreneur when the private benefit is BL, when the private benefit is rather low, and a bad entrepreneur when the private benefit is BH, that is bigger. The behavior of the entrepreneur is not observable by outside investors, and the private benefit is only enjoyable by the entrepreneur. So there is basically a problem of moral hazard. But the fact that this is not observable either, I mean, BH or BL, implies that there is also a problem of adverse selection. At the date of contracting, the borrower knows the level of his private benefit, while investors put common knowledge probability alpha that the entrepreneur is good. So we're going to have BL with probability alpha and BH with probability 1 minus alpha. All other parameters are common knowledge between the entrepreneur and the lenders. The entrepreneur is protected by limited liability. The entrepreneur and the outside investors are both risk neutral. Let RB denote what the entrepreneur obtains in case of success of the project. We implicitly assume that the entrepreneur receives no reward in case of failure. Determine what the expected gains of the entrepreneur are if he behaves well or if he behaves badly. Well, very easy. It is PH RB versus PL RB plus either BH or BL. Okay. What is the minimum amount the entrepreneur must obtain in case of success, such that the entrepreneur prefers to behave well than badly? Well, very easy. This is the incentive compatibility constraint. of the entrepreneur, and it's such that the HRB greater than PLRB plus PL for a good type entrepreneur, a good entrepreneur. Or okay, so it is either RB greater than PL over PH minus PL, or RB greater than BH over this. Okay. So we assume that PLR is lower than capital R. So no an investment. Okay, so no investment if the entrepreneur behaves badly, right? And do you remember what badly? This is on Canvas. What I'm doing currently is on Canvas. Do you remember, do you know what pledgeable income is? Pledgeable income is the maximum expected amount lenders can obtain such that the incentive compatibility constraint of the entrepreneur is satisfied. So the maximal expected gains for lenders such that the incentive compatibility constraint of the entrepreneur is satisfied. Okay, you agree with that? Let me know. You agree with that? Do you agree? Okay, thank you. So you see that actually this is precisely, this corresponds to the pledgeable income for bad entrepreneur. And this is the pledgeable income for a good entrepreneur. Okay. So I can give you more details if you want. So the project either is a success or a failure with probability pH 1 minus pH if the entrepreneur behaves well, if the entrepreneur behaves well. So for lenders, for instance, a bank, this is R minus RB 0. So the expected gains for lenders. Okay. So look at the following question, which is a good question. So we consider 3 possibilities of reward in case of success. So you see that, so remember, pH is bigger than BL. So you see that if RB is lower than PL over pH minus PL, any entrepreneur is not going to work, is always going to shirk, and therefore investment is not possible. Okay, so in that case, investment is impossible because lenders are not ready to invest in the project. Okay. So if in that case RB greater than this, so any entrepreneur is going to work. Any entrepreneur is going to work, but this implies that investment is not possible. Investment is not possible because the participation constraint of the lenders is not satisfied. So there is the other case, which is in between. So in between, good entrepreneurs works, while bad entrepreneur shirks. Okay. So in which of the 3 cases is it possible to have an equilibrium in which a bank accepts to fund the project? Of course, this is only possible in this situation. And it is going to depend on the proportion of good, rather bad entrepreneurs. So this is precisely question 4. So you remember, alpha is probability of a good entrepreneur. So in such a case, we're going to have alpha pH R minus RB. So with RB, so good entrepreneurs prefer to work, while bad entrepreneurs prefer to shirk and to receive the private benefit. And if we have this inequality with so good entrepreneurs prefer work, while bad entrepreneurs prefer to shirk. So with this inequality, obtaining a financing from outside investors, from lenders, is possible. Okay. You agree with that? Is that clear? Let me know. Yep. Great. Great. So there is just this notion of cross subsidy that I'm going to talk a little bit about now. Sorry. Okay, cross subsidies between types that occur when borrowing is possible. Well, actually, so cross subsidies, it's quite easy to understand. Why? Okay, because the our lenders mean is such that, sorry. And okay, so this is what should be asked by lenders in case that without the adverse selection problem, in case they are sure that they are facing only good if good entrepreneurs only. And this is if bad entrepreneur only. But what is asked here is this amount. So there is a cross subsidy from good entrepreneurs to bad ones. Okay. You agree? Is that clear? No questions? Nothing. Really? You want me to do something else? Nothing really? Someone is talking about multiple projects to finance. Come on, don't be shy. There is 10 minutes left. Okay. Let's see. We're gonna try to look a little bit about on this exercise on multiple projects. Okay, so this exercise. So basically, it's the same model of moral hazard as before, except that now the project, the entrepreneur can undertake 2 projects rather than just one. So let's say an entrepreneur wants to undertake 2 projects. The 2 projects are identical, taken on a standalone basis. Each project involves a fixed investment cost, capital I, and yield profit, capital R, in case of success and 0 in case of failure. The probability of success of each project depends on the behavior of the entrepreneur on each project. If he behaves well, the probability of success is PH, while it is equal to PL if he shirks, with, of course, PH greater than PL. Moreover, if the entrepreneur prefers to shirk, he obtains a non-transferable private benefit, capital B. The entrepreneur can choose to behave well on both projects, to behave well on one project, and to shirk on the other project, or to shirk on the 2 projects. If the entrepreneur shirks on one project but behaves well on the other project, his private benefit is equal to B. However, if he shirks on both projects, his private benefit is equal to 2B. The entrepreneur has wealth, which is retained earnings, which is equal to 2 capital A. Lenders are competitive. Everybody is risk neutral, protected by limited liability, and do not discount the future. In the following, we denote R K, what the entrepreneur get when K equals 0, 1, or 2 projects succeed. Without loss of generality, we consider that only R2 is positive. So the entrepreneur only gets something when the 2 projects succeed. Suppose first that the 2 projects are uncorrelated. So under which condition can an entrepreneur obtain a financing? That is what we want to look at. So here, actually, there is not only one incentive compatibility constraint, but 2. So the first incentive compatibility constraint is to say that the entrepreneur must prefer to work well on both projects rather than to shirk on both projects. So in that case, the probability of success of the 2 projects is that project 1 succeeds and project 2 succeeds at the same time. So the probability of success is PH square, PH times PH, okay, R2. And this has to be greater than shirking on both projects, R2 plus 2B, because shirking on both projects. And you obtain the first condition. Okay, very easy, first condition. And then the second incentive compatibility constraint is to say that we want the entrepreneur to work well on 2 projects rather than to work well on one project and to shirk on the other project. So now we want PH and PH R2, project 1 and project 2 both succeed, which is to be greater than project 1 succeed and project 2 succeed, but with a different probability, because in that case, in this project, the entrepreneur is working, whereas in the other project, the entrepreneur is shirking. R2 plus B, only B, because is working on one project but not on the other. And so well, it's easy to see that actually condition 1 implies condition 2. So in other words, if condition 1 is satisfied, then condition 2 is also satisfied. Okay, so we can put this constraint to equality and compute the participation constraint. Of lenders. Well, it is pH square times I think there is a mistake here. It's 2R. Plus the case in which there is only one project succeeding, and it is only, there are two ways. Either the first project is succeeding but not the second one, or the first project is a failure but the second project is a success. So here you have to multiply by 2. And this has to be greater than 2 to the initial investment. And taking into account this, you end up with this inequality. Okay. So there is another extreme case, which is when the two projects are perfectly correlated. So in that case, you see that when the two projects are perfectly correlated, well, if one project, the probability of success of the two projects is pH. Because if one project succeeds, the other succeeds too. Okay. So you've got pH R2, which has to be lower than PL R2 plus 2B. Okay. And if one project fails, the other project fails too. And so this is if we want one entrepreneur to work well on the two projects rather than to shirk on the two projects. And the second condition, there is only B, because in that case, the entrepreneur is working on the two projects rather than working only on one project and not on the other project. So here again, condition 1 implies condition 2. Yes, there is yep. And so we've got this condition. And you see that it's not possible to have something like pH 1 minus pH, contrarily to that situation. This is not possible. Well, it's not possible. Why? Because it is not possible to have one project succeeds, but not the other one. Why? Because projects are perfectly positively correlated. Okay. And finally, the third question is the case which is in between. The inequality, isn't it supposed to be? Yes, it's 2R. You're right, it's 2R. Other questions, because I think that we are almost running out of time now. Do you have any other question? No? Well. Okay, you want to stop? Okay, I'm gonna do that, but quite okay. So question 3 is about project which would be imperfectly correlated. Okay. So condition 1, you see that you've got rho is the correlation coefficient. So well, the case 2 is rho equal to 1, and case 1 is rho equal to 0. In between, you've got what? You've got projects are perfectly correlated with rho, so you've got rho pH, and with this kind of probability, they are independently correlated. So this is why you've got this expression here. And the same here, but with PL. And 2B because at the right-hand side of the inequality, the entrepreneur shirks on the two projects. So on the other condition, basically the left-hand side is still the same, but the right-hand side is different because this is only for one project. So one project is going to succeed with probability. So remember, yeah, okay. So remember the we want the two because it is R2. We want the two projects to succeed in order for the entrepreneur to obtain something. So either projects are perfectly correlated, and this is going to happen with probability PL, or they are not perfectly correlated, and this is going to happen with PL times PH, because there is one project for which the entrepreneur works, but the other project for which the entrepreneur shirks. So once again, condition 1 implies condition 2, and so by using condition 1 you obtain R2, and you replace the value of R2 in this expression, and you obtain the condition under which there is financing, that is, under which the participation constraint of the lenders, let's say a bank, is satisfied. Well, you see, here we have to take into account to compare, for instance, this condition to that condition. Okay, which one is such that, so you see that the right hand side is still the same. Right hand side, it is I minus capital A. So what in which case the pledgeable income, which corresponds to the left hand side, is the biggest? Well, this is when rho is equal to 0, no correlation. So it is in that case, because you see that actually this is smaller than B over PH minus PL, because PH over PH plus PL is lower than 1. Okay. So in other words, when projects are uncorrelated, it is easier to obtain financing from outside investors. Okay, that is the meaning of this. So before the project are financed, rho equals 0 facilitate financing. So if we consider the ex post, the entrepreneur ex post payoff, we've got this expression. And this is increasing in rho. So once financing is obtained, the expected gains of the entrepreneur increases with rho. Okay, so in that case, contrarily, the entrepreneur would prefer rho equals to 1. Okay. Okay. Rho, yes, is the correlation coefficient. So we've got rho pH, because in that case, this means that the two projects are perfectly related. If one succeeds, the other succeeds. So the probability of success is just pH. Plus, in that case, because now projects are independent, are uncorrelated. So for the two to be a success, we want project 1 to succeed and project 2 to succeed. So this is pH square. And in that case, if one succeeds, the other one succeeds for sure, because they are perfectly correlated. While there, they are uncorrelated. Is that clear? Okay, great. Good questions. Really? So everything is clear? You don't have any more questions? Is that what I understand? Okay, so I think we're going to stop now. So I wish you all the best and good success, of course, for the exam. And I hope, well, maybe next year, not for necessarily for you, but for the students, it's going to be possible to go to Vietnam. Okay, all the best. Bye. Goodbye. Au revoir.